So there is a history of Dutch foreigners in Joseon. There's Jan Janse Weltevree. There's Hendrik Hamel, who became really famous due to his very successful and insightful journal, the first European eyewitness account of Joseon. But there's also somebody who's not very famous, but who could have been somebody who might have changed the situation in the late 19th, early 20th century. His name is Fridolin Knobel. And this part of the lecture will deal with him. The first Dutch diplomat who almost made it to Korea as a diplomat. He could have been the first Dutch diplomat in Korea, but he wasn't. I'm giving away the end of the story already. In order to understand the background of this story, it may be good to have some knowledge of the situation Korea found itself in with regard to the emergence of the Western powers and also with regard to the emergence of Japan in the late 19th century. Because this is the moment when, for the first time, at least in the 19th century, many different foreigners enter Joseon. Like you can see a picture here of the first modern hotel for foreigners in Korea, the famous Sontak Hotel. This part of the lecture is about Fridolin Knobel, who was a writer, a traveler, a diplomat, appointed consul general in Beijing for the Dutch government in 1895. He was there also for the Boxer Rebellion, and he showed a very earnest and early interest in Korea. He undertook a journey to Korea in 1897. Before he ever went there, he'd even written reports based on the information he could obtain as a diplomat in China. Reports which were very positive about Korea as a trading partner. And if you would go to the Dutch archives, and I did, you would see that he lobbied really indefatigably for the conclusion of such a treaty. He just kept writing letters, we really should do this. He visited Korea again in 1901 when he was on his way back to the Netherlands, wrote new reports and really tried to convince the Dutch government that given the trade relations between Joseon and Japan and with Russia and America and France and England, and worse from the point of view of Knobel, even with Portugal, the Netherlands could not really stay behind. So if you go to the archives, there's surprisingly much correspondence about Korea to the Netherlands, much more than I would have expected to find, to be honest, because nothing much happened between the two countries in the 19th century. But Holland was very much aware of other countries' treaties with Korea, or I'm saying Holland, but maybe I should say some of the Dutch diplomats were very much aware and some others weren't. And Fridolin Knobel clearly identified opportunities for the Netherlands. And there's this very detailed draft written in beautiful blue ink by hand by Knobel himself that pleads his case. And he literally writes at the moment, there seems to exist also for us a certain cause to pay attention to Korea. And this he writes before he even visited the country. So he talked to fellow diplomats who'd been there, he'd written or he'd read reports on Korea. And for him it was clear, this is a country that we need to deal with, that we need to trade with. And what you can see here are some of the notes that he made for a draft treaty between Korea and the Netherlands. And this is made by his predecessor, by the way, in 1883. So there was real interest in the region. And it wasn't something very short-lived. It was something, the notion of establishing concluding a trade treaty with Korea, between Korea and the Netherlands, was alive and well for at least 20 years or so, which to be honest surprised me. And in 1883 there's this really detailed draft report. So you think that you're almost there because other countries have also concluded their treaties. But in 1885 it's still being discussed and there's still no outcome. In 1898, which is almost 15 years later, 1889, the Dutch government is still positive about a treaty with Korea. And this is the time when Fridolin Knobel tries to do his best to convince the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs that yes, we should do this. This is a country which will be beneficial for us in terms of commercial relations. And here is a list of other countries that concluded trading countries with Korea, with the years of the treaties written, the exact date of when the treaties were concluded. This is written in the hand of Fridolin Knobel. So there's this sense that the Netherlands are falling behind, and if we want to play a role in this region, we have to also trade with Korea. Now, and for years, and I've looked in the archives, there is really cautious enthusiasm in the Netherlands for a treaty with Korea. There's never a no. There's always yes. In general, we are positive with regard to such a treaty. That's the response Knobel and his predecessors usually get. But then all of a sudden, in 1901, after a very serious proposal, a draft proposal, has been circulated in the ministry and has been given also to the Ministry of Colonies. The Netherlands were then still a colonial power. There is a decision which is final. We are not going to pursue a treaty, and we are not going to establish a trading relationship with Korea. Knobel is devastated, and he is sent to Tehran, and he never returns to Korea. Now, this could be the end of the story. Missed opportunity, it's a pity, but there's more here. Because like what happened in 1667 after Hamel escaped from Korea, wrote his journal and then returned home and tried to interest the Dutch Indies Company in establishing trading relationship with Korea, which was then made impossible by the Japanese reaction. Again, it's the possible disruption of the trade relationship with Japan that makes this decision impossible for the Dutch government. There is a clearly articulated fear that the Japanese traders in the Dutch Indies and the Japanese interest in the Dutch Indies would react badly to what was considered basically Korean competition. So there's a strong fear of a Japanese reaction, both from Japan itself and from Japanese representatives, whether commercial or otherwise, in the Dutch Indies, that torpedoes basically the possibility of a Dutch-Korean trade treaty. And this is really the end of the matter, because it cannot politically be taken up again. So in terms of keywords, well, this is really a short chapter. If you would go through all of the writings, the first keyword left behind, Fridolin Knobel, the letters he wrote, the notes he made for drafts for treaties, it's really quite, there's quite much. But most of it is of the same content. We should have a trading treaty, a trade treaty with Joseon. And these are the things we should be talking about. These are the components, these are the elements which should be reflected in a treaty. And those notes are tens of pages long. So there's really, I don't know how many hours went into designing such a treaty, but this wasn't just a Sunday's afternoon's work. This seems to have been work of months and months of dedicated study of what Joseon would be able to offer and what the Netherlands would be able to offer Joseon, and how relations between the two countries should be structured. But it all came to nothing. And that's, I guess, the third keyword here is the relation with Japan, which may be substituted from a Dutch point of view with the notion of fear of Japan. The Japanese commercial agents, who were often suspected of being more than commercial agents for the Japanese government in the Dutch Indies, would suffer, and this is one of the analysis the Ministry of Colonies in the Netherlands make, would suffer from trading with Joseon, because the Dutch-Korean trade would quite probably replace much of the trade the Dutch had with Japan, and especially with these Japanese merchants and agents in the Dutch Indies. The Dutch government was afraid of the reaction and the relations this could have on the stability of the colony, of the Dutch Indies as a Dutch colony. So in the end it was decided that no, we're not going to do this. We're going to leave this opportunity for what it is, because we have what we want. Whether they were right in doing so, I'm not entirely sure, but that's speculation, not history, so I will not entertain that thought too long. But I would like, in the conclusion, come back to this issue and connect it to the issue of being a foreigner in Choson and what that meant, both for Choson and for the Netherlands in a broader perspective.